So my thought was to add administrative manager instead of the chair.
I'm gonna have a question on that.
Okay?
So does that mean I cannot go and ask questions of a department without going through Kate before I do it?
So, well, let's see what it says. The chair, or the county administrative manager shall receive all messages and communications from county department heads and others addressed to the commission as a body and shall be responsible to convey all such messages. So this is actually from department heads to the commission. But I do think you bring up a good point that if you are you shouldn't be going like to an employee. You should go through the department head, and if it's something that needs to come with Kate too, then go through Kate. So I don't think that there's any restrictions on if you have a zoning question, you can go ask that question that's personal. If it's something on behalf of the commission, then I would go through the department head and or Kate, and maybe go through Kate if it's something that
So the main part of
yeah.
that, if I can add, is the Open Meetings Act. So part of that is you as a commission can't, that's why we have, when you task staff to XYZ, it's because staff, their time is a resource of the county. And so that's why it has to go through the department head. It's more intended to where you can't task as an individual commissioner without a quorum of the commission, an employee or a department to do a task for the county commission, since their time is a resource. So that's that part of it, is we want it to go through the department head. Like if you needed reports for the commission on an upcoming commission meeting, let's say from accounts payable, you would go through the clerk auditor, Leslie, and then she would delegate that workload to her staff. You wouldn't go directly to Penny. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there's a problem with that,
Okay.
okay? If I need something, because I've got a request by the state to come up with some numbers that are on a Friday when most of them are not here, and Penny is here, why can I not go to Penny and ask for that information, whether it be an email or whatever? Why can I not get that?
My question would be, why is the state messaging you and not me?
Because you're not known yet.
But I can't get
And-
known if they go
and
around me.
You do not answer your phone all the time.
So can I step in real quick?
You may.
So the title of this resolution is the County Commission of Morgan County establishing county commission rules of order and procedure. Are we talking about our public meeting rules? Or are we talking about any and all? Because if we're talking about our public meeting rules, I think this is just
That is
fine that
correct.
when somebody comes up in a public meeting, or however we want to do that. But I guess as I read through this, it felt like it was more for the meeting we have first and third Tuesdays of each month, but not our typical communication.
Yeah,
right.
and I agree with that.
So this,
Yeah.
so then
So
what
the
we're
discussion
discussing right
is
now
going
has
beyond the
nothing
scope
to
of
do-
the policies and procedures.
Yeah, so if this is a policy and procedure then my question would be, I don't quite understand, so does that mean if the department heads come into this, well, maybe it's for items that they're pertaining to the public meeting, I guess.
Well,
Well,
and
and it says
it's
that-
for any item addressed to the commission as a body.
Body,
Right.
yeah, not,
Right.
So
not as
if
individuals. So that
this
doesn't
is-
mean that a department head couldn't reach out to an individual who oversees the portfolio.
And this
That's
is
right.
under
Or
Rule
to any
1.
commissioner,
Right.
because,
And-
I had one today.
It doesn't prohibit a commissioner from inquiring of a department head or an employee of a particular question. You can't, I would not want to represent myself as acting on behalf of the commission as a whole in doing so.
Right, and I agree with that. I agree, and I agree with not tasking them to do something outside of the normal duties of their job. But if there's some kind of a report that I can't get, and I can't get a hold of Kate, or I can't get a hold of anybody else, and I need a report.
would
I guess the
hope
point
that
I'm
would be-
making is this has nothing to do with
Yeah,
that.
and I agree with you, but in
Okay.
general, on the other end of it, for the question that I brought up, you know, as far as this, I agree with this. As far as the communications between the rest of the county commission and the rest of the county, I think we need to.
And we could pass other rules. This is throughout, it's more specific to the open meetings, to the meetings that we generally have here.
I'm okay
And,
with that.
you know, if we have that discussion later on, I think that that's fine as well.
Okay.
So,
With respect to the change that you suggested, I think that makes sense to have that go through Kate. I mean, in many respects, all this is talking about is how our agenda is formed.
right.
And what materials are submitted, and we have people submitting to Kate already. And so, to me, it makes sense to do that. I guess the only caveat would be is if there's a department head that wanted to communicate something that they didn't want to share generally or as part of a public meeting, maybe it's about Kate, you know, then are they prohibited from doing so?
No, not by this, because this is once again specific to the public meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah, if we go down to the next one.
So was there a consensus on having that be
Yeah.
the administrative manager?
I actually think if it's, well,
The hard part is, it is under rule number 1, and rule 1 is specific to chair and vice chair.
yeah, I actually would leave it as is, I think. That's my opinion.
Since it is more limited
sorry.
in scope, and then it'll come up and be communicated across, whether it's you or Kate communicating it.
When it has to deal with the public meeting.
Right.
I'm fine with that as well.
I'm okay
Okay.
with it.
I think, frankly, I think people will communicate the way they want to, regardless of what this rule says.
All right, so on this one, we did say 3 members, but technically that's only 60%, and open meetings does require the 2/3. And so, plus, we may have only 4 present that night, and so I think if we just leave it at 2/3, it'll follow open meetings. Is that all right? Okay, we kind of talked about this last time, about whether to have a vote to go into public hearing. And it may go a little quicker if the chair, so if we look at B, the chair declares the public hearing open, and then E, the chair declares the public meeting closed, or public, and we updated that to hearing closed. So I guess the question would be, do we want to have a vote for that, or just allow the chair to make that declaration based on who's providing comments? Okay.
But is it by law?
I agree, and I
we
think
have-
that's the way we used to do it, and then all of a sudden we were voting and having a motion to open public hearings, and I prefer this methodology.
I
It's on the
prefer
agenda
that.
anyway. It's not like you're.
I prefer it, it's just a matter, is it the law?
Yeah, there's nothing in open meetings that I could find that requires a vote to go into the public hearing.
Okay, I'm fine with
Okay.
I will point out that 3 minutes is a minute longer than they give you in Salt Lake City.
And,
it. Change.
Salt Lake City's
And I
just
did-
2? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, they are 2 minutes, and they have a little horn that goes off when you exceed it. Well, it's a little buzzer sort of thing. You can hear it out in the audience when somebody goes over the
Considering we're in
time.
Morgan, let's just do a cowbell.
There you
yeah,
go.
more. Okay, so there is later on where it talks about the 3-minute time limit, but we did talk about it last time to add it here. I'm okay having it in 2 places, but we could remove that red line because it does show up later as well.
I think it's fine to have it in 2
Okay.
places.
All right. So the administrative meeting, this one, I was going to reach out to a couple other county attorneys because they did change the Open Meetings Act this year. From what I understand, in an attempt to eliminate the administrative meetings. You're nodding, Kate. Is that your understanding as well?
Right, because when Commissioner Fackrell came back and mentioned that, I tried to find it in statute, and I couldn't
It's not
I
there
couldn't find
anymore.
where it was
They-
allowed or not allowed.
They took it out of the definition. It used to have a public meeting is not, and then they listed the requirements of the administrative meetings. Now they just have a definition of what a public meeting is in 52-4-103 subsection 5. So my suggestion would be to remove this for now because I think that it's been removed from the Open Meetings Act and I can't find it anywhere at this
But
point.
you said they do have a, what's 52-4-1035?
That one is when they describe what a public meeting is. And so they still have public meeting is defined as what it used to be, and they've taken out public meeting is not with the administrative meeting. So the idea was they want all the deliberations to be in a public and open meeting.
You mean including administrative?
There's-
Yeah, what that
Administrative
means.
What they're
Longer
saying is no
expansion.
more administrative. We just
Meetings.
want it.
Which is, I mean, if we were just a legislative body, that would make absolute sense to me. But where we have the administrative function, the executive function as well, to me, we should be able to have administrative meetings, but
think
I don't
before
make
we remove
decisions
this,
at the
we oughta
level.
See what other counties are doing to
Okay.
deal with that.
Does that include emails too? Administrative
That's
emails?
how some are interpreting it, as even the emails is counting as a meeting. But, so what it says is,
That seems pretty counterproductive if you.
it's pretty limited, and I think that they pushed the pendulum too far on this one, and we'll probably see something in the next legislative session. But the definition, it says meeting means a gathering of a public body or specified body with a quorum present and that is convened by an individual with authority to convene the public body or specified body and following the process provided by law for convening the public body or specified body and for the express purpose of acting as a public body to receive public comment about a relevant matter, deliberate about a relevant matter, or take action upon a relevant matter. And I think the B, deliberate about a relevant matter, is where there's that gray area of, we're not taking action, we're not receiving public comment, we're just deliberating, but is that administrative? It doesn't exempt the administrative discussion. So I think there's a little bit of gray area. And maybe we leave it in for now and I can make some calls and see how others are interpreting it.
It sounds like we need Kate call our administrative meetings because she's not authorized to call us together.
Oh,
But if we came together, then it would be, just going by their definition.
right. So as long as it's
Has
not
to be
being
somebody
called,
convened by
doesn't have
somebody
authority.
authorized to call.
right. It's a good loophole.
You should be an attorney.
I'm not suggesting it, I'm just saying, just listening to the definition, that would be the way it would.
Right. Okay.
We don't have many. I mean, we had a few during COVID where we were trying to decide some things, or at least talk about things, and then, but all of our decisions were made in open meetings, so. But
I think
if
the
they don't want 'em, they don't want
closest,
'em.
I think the
What about
closest would be
hiring?
the management meetings that we were doing once a month. We've had a few, we've postponed a few. But I think for the most part, we usually have 2 or less commissioners to those meetings, and maybe we just rotate who's coming based on the topic or portfolio of discussion. So that's another,
I highly doubt that the intent of the state is to not allow the administrative body, the executive body of the county to not be involved in administrative discussions. So I think, I don't know, having a management meeting and having the commissioners attend, I really don't think that that's not in line with the regulations.
right.
And if it is, they need to fix that.
And I think they will this year. It's just the one where it says deliberate about a relevant matter. I think that's so broad that a management meeting, there could be deliberation about a relevant matter. And then when I'm looking at, in the Open Meetings Act, when we go from subsection 5 to 7, it says public body means an administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative body, and then it goes through. So it is encompassing the administrative and executive bodies as well. So I think they just pushed it too far back.
The person that talked in that session that I was in on was Johnny Miller with the USIP group, because he's the one that has to cover our butts if we're in trouble.
Right.
And so I would suggest you reach out to him,
Okay.
and he was the one that was discussing that.
I will. Thanks. All right. No message yet.
Okay.
So I'm just watching for it. Okay, so here is just showing that we took out for any ordinance or resolution, and we just limit the roll call to be by request of a member. So pretty simple. All right. This one, there was some discussion about voting by email ahead of time, and then saying, well, there might be information that comes up in a meeting that may change the vote. And so we added this at the end. A commission member who will be absent from the meeting may provide comments on an item to the chair to be read into the record. However, that member will not be allowed to vote on that item. Is everyone okay with how I phrase that?
I'm worried about that, because if they're there by electronic communication, or
Well,
by,
this is where they're not there.
if they're not there, because it does not say that.
I think maybe what I'll do is I'll create a new paragraph to make that more clear. I think that's just where we tacked it on in the meeting. I'll create a new paragraph and make sure that if it bumps it, if we reference any other paragraph, that will be updated as well.
Okay.
And maybe for further clarification after meeting, you could put in parentheses, like electronically or in person,
Okay.
just so it's clear that they're completely absent, not
Yeah.
joining from the
Okay. I've highlighted a few more. I think a lot are self-explanatory, but if there's questions, just mark them and we'll hit them when I get back.
Sure. 17, due to the inherent difficulty of controlling confidentiality when a meeting is carried electronically to a remote location, participation by a commission member electronically at a closed meeting is discouraged. We've waived the rules on a few to allow for that. I believe the intent was we can't guarantee that if we're in, if we go into closed session, that whomever is participating electronically is alone. But we still want the ability to offer that, and so that's why we've redlined this one. Does anyone have an issue with the?
Even putting this red line in, that still doesn't guarantee anything.
Yeah.
True.
I actually think I might modify that language, and instead of saying is alone, can provide assurances that the meeting can continue with confidentiality. So,
headphones on.
yeah, that's what I do. I put my headphones on so that they can't hear, and then I go to another room. If I don't have that many people at my house, if we're there or somewhere else, but I don't know that alone is as important as an affirmative statement that the conversation can remain confidential.
So taking
But
out.
I don't, on the other hand, if I'm speaking, then if I'm not alone, somebody would hear me, so maybe it's fine the way it is. Like I said, I usually just go to the next room with my headphones.
Well, I can give an example. I was in a meeting, or not in a meeting, I was at a conference, and I was alone in a room, but I got the message saying that you could hear everything in the background. There was nobody there. I was in a room by myself. So I don't know what room you guys heard, or what was heard. But so, is it alone? I mean, there was nothing. I was in my room by myself. So there was something going on the outside that for some reason it did not close or stop the sound canceling mechanism or whatever. So I don't know if alone, I like the way Robert said it, where you can preserve confidentiality would be the way you need to do it, even if it's about me.
You could just say if that member is in a location where confidentiality can be preserved.
But who gets to determine that?
The member's gonna have to
Right.
make that
So-
determination.
Okay.
I mean,
The next
It
one?
just assumes people are even gonna pay attention to what I'm saying. Not here, in the room I'm in, which, in and around my family, that's not likely. My kids would call, the first thing they would say is mom there? They don't wanna talk to me.
Agendas will be set in order of priority with public meetings at the beginning of the agenda. The reason we changed that is later on in here, maybe prior to here, it does state that we do not begin public meetings until after 6 p.m.
Is
So-
there a reason for the 6 p.m.?
I think that's,
State.
it's a state
And what-
requirement.
Then how is it that other counties, like Beaver County this morning, at 9 a.m. this morning, or at 8:30, they were in public meetings then? They were in their commission meetings.
They can have a public meeting, they just can't have a public hearing.
Well,
I'm just wondering.
is it 6 p.m.? Because like, I think Salt Lake County is a daytime
Yeah,
meeting
so is Weaver County,
commission.
Davis County.
Is
Budget
it budget
only.
only that's 6 p.m.?
It's what? We ought to find that out.
So,
Okay.
That's correct. From what I remember from Weber County, is budget only was an evening meeting. The rest of the public hearings were not.
so then
So
do we want?
do we want to generally, given our typical time frame, do we want to have hearings, public hearings after 6 p.m.? It gives more people the opportunity to attend.
I like it like that. I just think if we
I'm
strike
okay
that
with it.
first line, then the chair sets the agenda.
Public, of priority with,
Chair shall be in charge of establishing the order of the agenda.
Which they already essentially are.
but we don't have public hearings at the beginning of the agenda typically.
Correct. Aren't we saying that that
You're just saying
is
remove that line.
stricken? That,
You just strike the sentence, okay. The chair shall be in charge of establishing the order of the agenda.
Yeah, I also kind of like removing the order of priority as well, because I don't know that we always do it in order of priority, and who's to say what the
Who's to
priority
say
is?
whose
And
priorities
what
are
kind of
who?
priority?
Yeah.
It was probably temporal priority is what we were talking about, but in terms of the time it was submitted,
Yeah, exactly.
okay.
Okay, this is public comment, I believe. Yeah, public comments, questions. Is that where you wanna? So is this the 3 minutes? Okay, the 3 minutes. Okay, and then at present, we don't currently respond unless asked to respond. Change anything in section D.
Indicate that respond.
I like the
Could
chair
take
having
a-
discretion.
Personal privilege.
Or say, hey, let's talk about this. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing, and say, hey, Chair, can we handle this, right? Like, that's fine.
I think it saved some issues in
Been a
previous
few where
meetings.
the response is pretty easy to give, right? Well, and
So then I
generally we
don't
say, hey, we
understand
don't
that.
generally respond, but in this case, here's
I mean, but E, I don't know why he has highlighted.
I think because typically we don't promise a response. We don't make responses at the meeting and we don't necessarily respond to them at the following. And we take comments, some are responded to, some are just considered in the evaluation of the application that's heard later that night or on a subsequent week. And so he may be looking at this and saying, this is suggesting that we provide more response than we typically do.
So strike F,
I think I can move it completely,
right?
because you're gonna get some firm that are going to respond at some point. At this meeting or the next.
So I think this goes back to the chair making the motion, not making a motion, but just adjourning and entering into.
So I think the only reason that entities sometimes do this is to prevent a chair from just closing meetings
Yeah.
prematurely, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess if there is a member of the body that wants to say something or wants to discuss something, having a vote to close it isn't a bad thing.
Okay, so
So, well, the question is, do you want, you could have a hybrid of this, though. This requires a motion and a second, whereas the chair could indicate, yeah, he's gonna call for an adjournment and put it to a vote, and then somebody, but
I
this,
like that.
this,
That's a little quicker.
yeah. It's not like this takes a ton of
I
time.
guess it's the same thing,
Hey.
whether you're asking somebody else to make the motion or you're making the motion.
We're always willing.
You can put my name in there for always.
Get a
Sorry,
so
Matt,
moved.
I want to talk a little longer.
delivering.
That one makes sense.
Yeah, not that it happens timely yet. So I do have a question on that. I might be throwing a commissioner on the bus. But if a commissioner puts a request in for the agenda, but then sends no supporting documents, what am I?
Take it off.
It's you.
I know it is. I'm gonna take it off tonight anyway.
Okay.
He got them to me last
Like, did they
night.
get a courtesy call? What? Like,
Well, I think we should, yeah, if you remove somebody's agenda item, we should probably inform them of that, but I do agree, if we don't have the information before we need to send the packet out, and it's not urgent, then let's push it to the next meeting.
But that qualification is why you wanna have flexibility.
Yes.
They're, given that we only meet every 2 weeks, and sometimes 3 weeks, I think that if somebody's waiting on something, gets it on the agenda, and, you know, we don't get it until Monday, then, okay, but try to get it to us in advance.
It's something sometimes like this, we could still discuss a little bit because I've been able to email you the things today since he sent them to me last night, but
And that's
we
a
can
good
look at it
point,
right in the
too.
meeting if we want.
That's a good point too, and if somebody feels like they need more time, then okay, we punt it to the next week.
But we don't need to make a decision.
My biggest thing is I personally want to have the information by Friday night, so that way if I'm having my date night with my wife at home, I can at least review it.
You're reviewing it for date night?
Yeah, we do all the time. Or in other words, if we don't have a date night that night, and it might be Saturday night for our date night, or vice versa, I like to start the packet on that night, one of those nights on the weekend. I'm not like you guys that can multitask and do many things at once. I have to concentrate on one item, and I go through every bit of research for it. So that's only my question. It's not for date night, but in normal people's date night time, like Jared's.
so that's the only highlights and red lines he's got in here. Chief, do you want to, before we change topic, Chief's here, who you guys want an update on our fire truck?
So what's this one under?
Yeah.
Go down below,
Yep, do it
up,
online.
above.
That's it.
That's it, that's all the highlighted portions.
Jan should be off there.
The fire truck.
It's in Salt Lake now, right?
Ann should be off there.
Well, I know, but this is the 21 version. Like, in the mic. Thank you.
should be here
Thank you.
next week.
Next week.
A couple
Awesome.
things they missed, so yeah, they're fixing them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We've had a busy month,
Yeah.
Looking
and
forward
it's
to it.
halfway through it.
Oh man, it's insane.
Yep.
You had
I
some,
thought you were gonna take us out and let us drive it around the park.
Absolutely.
At least I wanna make the siren work.
Oh, for sure. You're gonna love the siren.
I would like to see it.
So my hope was next meeting, when it's here, that we put it out on the street and have the,
Yeah.
and if you guys wanna go climb on it, get your picture taken with the fire hat.
We're gonna climb on it.
I'll let you go down the road and run the siren and the lights, whatever you want.
When I was a little kid, I had a rule that if I got a new toy, then I got to sleep with that toy, right? That got to go,
If that's
got
what
to
you
hold
want.
it,
Go
right?
back to your house.
So this, I
You're
won't
sleeping-
sleep with the
you're
fire
gonna-
truck, but I will go check it out.
You can
right?
sleep
That's
with
part
the
of the
But you have
deal.
to
You
sleep
gotta
at the
go-
fire
Yeah,
station.
there's room in the back, right? I mean, just saying.
Lots of room in it.
So when is it coming?
It should be here sometime next week. They couldn't give me a definite date. It depends on what parts they needed from Pierce and how soon they can get them. So,
You gotta ship them from Florida, don't they?
And just to give you an idea of the frustration of building out the fire department 10-year plan, that fire truck we ordered how many years ago? 3?
3, 2.5, 3.
It was a little over $690 for that.
Yeah.
We'd probably be looking at 1.6 for the same vehicle and 4 years out in delivery.
Yeah, it's
So it's really hard to do a 10-year capital improvement or capital needs project funding when it's already tripled in
Mhm.
the amount of time that it took. But our next need is an ambulance to put in rotation. Those are how far out on order?
2 years. Yeah,
So
needs to be
some-
more of them for sure. So,
Do we have any, I'm just curious, do we have any ambulances stationed down near Mount Green?
well, like we've talked about this before, I've offered several times, but Chief Brindell is just doesn't want one right now. It's the staffing issue.
Okay.
Like right now, I think they're down to 4 or 5 EMTs is all. There's no advanced EMTs down there right now. So we run advanced. So he's lost several members. So we are just not sure where to go with that.
So have we done a advertisement or anything to try to find any down
He
there
has.
that wanna learn?
He has. It's a
Because
big
I just
commitment.
think it'd be beneficial to have one down in that area.
So do I. That was one of my main goals when I took this job. Was I wanted an ambulance down there.
Yeah, I mean, as long as that's a separate district, though, it's not like we have the authority or the ability to press that on them.
No.
That's their decision. so.
Right. And I think like if we wanted to pursue it and they had staffing, we could put one of ours down there, and we could pay for fuel, for the ambulance, everything. They would just have to staff it. But staffing shortages, it's still hard.
So, I mean, it's an interesting situation because they are a separate district
Mhm.
for fire protection, but they're not a separate district for ambulance.
Correct.
That's true. Yep.
So, if it's a staffing issue, if you had the staffing, you could put one down there staffed.
We could. We
If
would have
they'd
to come
allow
up
us
with
use
more
space in their
funding.
facility too.
Yeah, we'd have to come up with more funding to add staffing.
And then would they allow us to house it there in their building?
Well, it's another issue is they're full, just like we are. They have to maybe put their squad outside or one of their trucks outside. And I think that's one of the agenda items is
Right, the
talking about
discussion on
a
a fire.
countywide fire district. I really think it's time. Like we either do a countywide district or a countywide fire department. It makes no sense now to have 2 separate fire departments, one covering a very small area and one covering the whole entire area. I think you could save money with staffing, with equipment, and even the stations themselves. Because we're both doing all the specialty stuff because we're both separate entities. And we could just have one department do this, like Swift Water, and the other one do heavy rescue. Yet we could cover a larger area and give the citizens a better service.
Do you know the
He's-
circumstance where there's been two districts that combine?
So there's one district, right? And then the county has a county fire department. We're not a district, correct? The county's not a district.
Okay, so we're the county and a district combined.
Yep. So the county entity and then a district.
Right.
So I thought it'd be best to try to do a feasibility study to see what that would actually cost us and to see the advantage that would give us. So I think the biggest advantage would be homeowners insurance in like Peterson, Enterprise, where we're so far away. Because if we was countywide and we had just 2 stations, then the Mountain Green now can cover a larger area and cover those. We actually, it's a 5-mile radius, the way the crow flies, and if we look at that, the 2 station areas actually crisscross.
So sorry, my question is, do you
Mhm.
know of an example where we've had a county fire department and a district fire department that have combined? Has that happened before that you're
I'm sure it
aware of?
has. I'm not really aware of those situations. No.
I
But
think
I'm
we'd need to look at what the process was for dissolving the district. Upon dissolution, if the assets simply went to the county, it would just be absorbed into the department, but I don't know. I suspect the act, I've only looked at what it takes to create one. I suspect dissolving one is also addressed in the act. And it might take a vote of the residents in that area in order to cause that dissolution to occur.
Right.
I think if we do a study, we ought to evaluate what percentage of the county's fire department and emergency services is related to fire specifically, because technically that ought to be backed out of the property taxes in Mountain Green.
Correct.
Because right now, we pay for the full county fire department assessment, and we pay for the full district
So
assessment.
you're paying double.
I don't know that it would be technically double with respect to fire only, but our budgets are done so that it's like, you've got an EMS component that's all built into our budget as well, so it's kind of hard to know exactly what that is.
And you're funding it all from the general fund rather than from a separate district that muddies the waters, I think, in the too.
Yeah. And that's something I would assume the feasibility study would help us out with. Like, should we do a countywide district, or should we do a countywide fire department?
Because I think if you did the feasibility study and you were able to articulate what that difference would be, that would be an economic justification for Mountain Green to consider the proposal to dissolve their district.
Right.
I mean, there are probably some people in Mountain Green that don't even realize that it's separate, so.
I agree.
And there's probably some that'll be adamant they don't want to make any changes. So
That's why you
So-
have to submit such things to a vote of the residents to see where it comes out.
So if this count, or if the area down there decides they want to be incorporated, then what would happen with that fire service?
Well, they could enter into an interlocal agreement with the county to provide that service, and/or if it happened before it dissolved, then it might become a city department. You would still dissolve the district if you did that, or they could just keep it independent and do the interlocal agreement for them to provide the service.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Want a 10-minute break before commission meeting?
yeah, is there anything else that you guys would like to discuss here? We could go through commissioner comments while we've got a minute. We're gonna start with that.
Can we do that
Sure.
second meeting?
Okay. Anybody have anything you'd like to make comment about?
Did you guys hear the announcement today? Doesn't affect us much, except that Governor Cox received from the federal government that the BLM unappropriated lands, and the definition of unappropriated lands is kind of unknown at this moment, but those that are not directly, not doing anything, they're being turned over to the state to be used as public ground for the state and not to be used in WMA, or to be used as, can't be sold off. So basically, BLM would not be handling those grounds anymore, but the state would. So that was an announcement today at 11. They told us this morning at 8.
It's interesting.
What can I buy you here, Jared?
I have more.
Okay.
You can share.
Well, we'll take a 10-minute break here, and then we'll convene our regular meeting at 5 o'clock.